Welcome to Mommy Heal Thyself. We feature guests who provide you with the tools, resources, and strategies you need to say no to a life of pain and suffering from all forms of preventable disease, toxic drugs, and unnecessary surgeries. We hope to inspire you to boldly reclaim your ability to heal and to serve the ones you love. Welcome, my beautiful ladies, to another episode of Mommy Heal Thyself. Today, I have with us the fantastic Tennille Jacobs, and she is a certified trauma-informed conscious parenting coach and Lunar aligned manifestation meditation coach. As the co-founder of Moon Maiden Meditation and originally from Zimbabwe, Tennille combines psychological insights, spiritual wisdom, and culturally driven child-centric approach to empower women in all stages of life. She's dedicated to helping women achieve fulfillment and balance, whether they embrace motherhood or pursue alternative paths. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Tennille.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you know, I am super excited when you have the idea of talking to us about maiden, mother, matriarch, empowering women with child-centric and lunar aligned approach. So first and foremost, how did you come about doing this stuff?
Well, honestly, it's just it's noticing some of the gaps that I found in the Western world, because I'm born and raised in Zimbabwe, immigrated to Canada as an adult. I was 20 when I got here. And then you just kind of get into the groove of life, and many things people don't consider is how hard it is for adults when they immigrate to get used to a society, right? And so by the time I have two children, very far apart in age. My son is going to be 20 this year, and my daughter just turned 4.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's been amazing. So when my son was born, that was when certain things started to really kind of like, where's this coming from, So for example, I was first time mom without family and stuff here. You kind of trying to figure it out yourself, right? So I dug into parenting books and the like. And then I'm seeing, certain recommendations that I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like a big one. And I know I'm putting a disclaimer here. This is my opinion and my experience. But I have to put it there because I think officially it's still recommended. But one of the big ones was co-sleeping, right? Where there's huge recommendations against co-sleeping. And I'm like, where's that coming from? It's like, we all sleep without babies. What do you mean I can't sleep with my baby?
Exactly.
So I mean, I co-slept with my son. I breastfed as well. And these were just things that were just naturally part of my upbringing, right? Same thing with cloth diapering. I cloth diapered as well. And actually cloth diapering is really good. It may be a bit complicated for some, but it actually gets your children out of diapers faster too, right? There's lots of benefits to cloth diapering. So I did all of that because I was like, I'm going to do it my way anyway, right? And same thing with baby wearing, as they call it. Anyway, again, very much a part of this is what we do at home, tie the baby on your back, get things done. This is life. So in the meanwhile, of course, I'm like super, because I have my own trauma from childhood. There were, aspects of my childhood that weren't great. So of course, I want to be the best mom I can be and really focusing in on that. And I ended up going back to, because I didn't finish high school because of the back and forth, like between Canada and so as an adult, I went back to uni and I pursued my degree in psychology. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I was like 34 when I went back to uni. And I wanted to fast track it. So I finished my degree in like 3 years.
Wow.
Graduated magna cum laude. And I really I loved it, right? The neuroscientific part. And the thing about it is why I think I ended up even doing so well in my degree was because I was able to kind of like make connections with life, with my experiences back home, with what I was, going through as a parent. And what thing made me laugh is that a lot of now the shift in developmental psychology is understanding that these things I was talking about, like they're good for babies, and you're in the world, people have been told not to do these things with their babies. So it's crazy, right? But the more that I looked at it, I'm like, there's so much more to it. So even for example, in Zimbabwe, one of the things that happens is when a mom so I mean, old culture generally married couple, right? When the wife is 6 months pregnant, she gets taken to the husband's family, and from that point she doesn't have to do nothing for the rest of her pregnancy, right? They take care of everything, right? They take care of everything. They make sure she's good, she's fed, you don't have to worry about nothing, right?
Yeah.
And over here, it's like completely different things. You've got mothers that are like almost, glorifying working till that very last minute, till your water breaks. It's like, what are you doing? And again, no judgment. I understand the societies here. It's just from a child developmental perspective, it's like, what's going on? And what got interesting was that when I was in psych, we started talking about some studies that were found, and these epigenetic studies, which are fairly new, are coming up. And they're now showing why this thing that people have been doing culturally, just naturally, is actually necessary. So the studies are recent because of 9/11. During 9/11, they studied some mothers that were near the site, at different stages of pregnancy, right? Throughout pregnancy, when it comes to the kind of narrative around pregnancy, everyone's told to be worried about those first few months. That's when all the things can happen. You listen, all these things. But the last part of your pregnancy is just as important for different reasons. And what they found with these studies was that mothers who were in their later stage of pregnancy and were near the site, their children were born with higher cortisol levels, which means they had higher susceptibility to stress. Just because of the stress their mothers faced, even though those mothers were in their later stages of pregnancies. Mothers that were in the earlier stages, their children weren't really affected the same. And that's a key thing. It's showing us that the whole pregnancy is important. How stressed moms are affects babies and actually puts them into this world with like a disadvantage. So things have to change, society has to change. It has to change its approach to parenting. And when I talk about child-centric, it's not to say everybody wants to be a mother. No. But when we realize that our development as children really has such a huge impact on our outcomes as adults, we start to recognize, number one, what we missed, right? So being child-centric allows us to focus in on ourselves, on kind of nurturing that child that didn't get the things that they should have gotten. As well as, of course, trying the best we can as our parents to make sure that we give the children the best chance, right? In terms of development. Sorry, I did it again. Waffle, I'm so sorry.
I love everything that you're saying. I mean, I can resonate with all of your stories because I cohabitated with my kids. I nursed them in the bed because, girlfriend, I was not getting up out the bed to go see my child. I was like, that ain't happening. So whatever, all that nonsense. Oh, we got to sleep on the tub. I don't care. I can't breastfeed a child on the. That's not happening. Cloth diapers, all of that stuff. And I love, when you were saying that in Zimbabwe, when a mom gets to that 6 months part, it's like, hey, kick back, mama, and take off and chill out, because that was the same kind of treatment that I saw in Japan, because I lived in Japan for 3 years. And I was like, oh, this is so awesome. And then when I checked into the maternity clinic, and you are expected to stay there for a week. And the rest of, I was in the military, so the rest of the military moms would like check out after a day. I was like, oh, heck no, I'm staying here for a week. I'm taking all my 7 days. Michelle is not going back, So I just love all of this stuff. But as you said, it's really about being child-centric. And I think we have lost that in this society. I can't say what's going on in other continents, but here in this society, everybody seems so obsessed with themselves, and I'm saying it is so important that we elevate the needs of the child. And we've had other speakers that have come in here to talk to us about the needs of a child and why it's so important to keep your child close to you for the first 3 years, to not put your child in daycare and all of those things. And, in alignment with what we were saying with the cortisol levels, now we know that those elevated cortisol levels will affect the microbiome. And that sets up a child for aberrations in their immune system for the rest of their lives. So, I'm just amazed. So now you've talked to us a little bit about child-centric. the child-centric approach. And I'm curious as to what is the interplay with this whole lunar cycle stuff? Because it's like, are we going into the woo-woo land here, or
The
you
woo,
got more
I'm like, ooh, it's a
science
woo.
for us?
So honestly, it's really just about coming in touch with nature. So it's interesting. So I've always been, drawn to the moon. It's just one of those things, right? And then so it starts with like paying attention, and then I started realizing, no, the different lunar phases have got significant kind of energies. And for those that think astrology is woohoo, horoscopes, those may be woohoo, but astrology is not, because
The
astrology
moon
is
is
literally
real.
just right. Astrology is literally just patterns over generations, like centuries that people observed,
Yeah.
right? So there is definitely something to it, right? Because it comes down to numbers and patterns at the end of the day. So astrology is not woohoo. Horoscopes, maybe. So when it comes down to the lunar cycle, it turns out the different stages of the lunar cycle are actually like they've got energies that are actually aligned better for specific goals, so to speak, right? So in the terms of parenting, if you get in touch with your own like if you understand, and this is all comes down to intentional living, right? So something just as simple as paying attention to the lunar cycle and how it affects you, right? That can let you gauge your ups and downs, because I think we live in a world right now that everybody expects you to always be on, right? And that's not the reality, right? I mean, just the same way there's an analogy of the moon, just the same way the moon goes full, and wane.
Yeah.
That's life, right? We have our ups, we have our downs, but
Exactly.
it's all part of the cycle.
Yeah.
And if we don't become intentional about becoming aware with ourselves,
Yeah.
then what are the chances of actually being aware, when it
Mm.
comes to our children?
Mm.
So I've written a book. It's called The MIT Method of Conscious Parenting. It's a bit of play on the words. So again, back to Zimbabwe, my culture. Um, in our culture, when you're born, sorry, when your child is born, you lose your name essentially,
Yes.
right? You're no longer Tennille. You now become Amai. That means mother of the child,
Yeah.
right? So, and the same thing with dad. Dad becomes Baba so and so. But in Shona culture, in Zimbabwean culture, it actually goes deeper, because we have not only do you, the mother and the father, get named for your child, so do the people around them. Your brothers and sisters become Baba Munini or Baba Mkuru, where Baba means father, right? Munini means, so like your younger brother would be like your child's little father, right? Or your bigger brother would be like your child's like big father, right? And on the mom's side, it's my nini and my guru, right? Same thing, big father. But essentially, the people in your family also get named for the child, right?
In relationship to the child, exactly. Yeah.
The
Your
child. So it's
identity is now in relationship to the child.
right, and so basically, that's almost like an unspoken agreement that we
Mm.
are, we're creating an environment that's good for the child,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And it's funny because that's Zimbabwean culture. One of the things that stood out for me when I moved to Canada is seeing a lot of similarities with Native American culture.
Yeah.
And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah.
We're like across the world from each other. There was no missionary work to teach us things from each other. These are just how these cultures work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And within my community psychology course in uni, we spoke about the indigenous. Oh my gosh, because I don't know if you know about what happened with the residential schools in Canada, but it was pretty.
Yeah. It's horrific. Same in the
Right?
United States.
And so what they spoke about was how the structure of the indigenous community used to be, and
Mm.
again, child-centric. It
Yeah.
was literally like a target board. So the circle was the children,
Yeah.
the next circle was the caregivers,
Mhm.
and the final circle was the protectors,
Exactly.
right? And so by taking away the children, it basically the community fell apart because they didn't have
A
and
reason
we
for
see it,
being. Yeah.
everything. Yeah, there was no purpose anymore because that was the core of their culture. And then we saw alcoholism, domestic violence, all these things start to manifest in these communities. And then people turn around and judge them. But no, their communities were destroyed by taking away their purpose,
Mhm.
right? And again, so just the fact that these indigenous cultures have got they child-centric, and you can go anywhere in the world and you see
Exactly.
this,
Exactly. Exactly.
right? So the
Yeah.
Western world and it treats children like they're inconveniences
Or property,
or property. Yes,
labor,
income
labor.
property.
Mhm.
But ultimately, it's like everything, even in terms of the parenting suggestions, it's all aimed to make life easier for the parent, so the parents can be better workers, really and truly, right? We want your parents to sleep through the night so that they can work better and they can be more functional at work. So you have got to learn how to make yourself fall asleep at night.
Sacrifice the child.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And literally for capitalism, for the sake of your
corporation.
Exactly. So,
Anyway,
sorry. So that's where it's like,
I tell you, it's just so encompassing. And I'm curious if you have looked at the connection with the lunar cycle and our women's cycle, because unfortunately, most women in today's society have everything screwed up with these birth control pills. So they have no awareness of their natural cycles. So when you tell us to be more aware of how the moon is affecting our bodies, there's this obstruction because of the manipulation of our hormonal system by an external force. So I was curious if that affects any of the research or what you do with parents.
Well, I mean, when it comes down to the lunar cycle and the women's cycle, it's no coincidence that the average woman's cycle is the same length as the lunar cycle, right? Now, in particular cultures, so even within our culture, the lunar cycle is specifically related to healing, right? So in South Africa, I actually on I think there's a mythology based on African spirituality, Zulu spirituality in particular, where there's the moon goddess. Her name is Unyanga, and Unyanga is it's so funny because colonialism really had an effect on the world.
Oh yeah.
Their traditional healers were known as Nyangas, right? And we were raised to be scared of them. Like, oh, they're evil, they're bad, and now in my research, and I'm realizing this connection between Unyanga and the Izinyanga, or these Nyangas that I grew up being afraid of, you find out that they are specifically herbalists. They're not just traditional healers, they're specifically herbalists, right? And Unyanga is not only a moon goddess, but she's specifically the moon goddess related to healing. And she oversees the Izinyanga, right? And she guides the Izinyanga with the lunar cycle. So true Izinyangas, nowadays there's fake ones, but true Izinyangas, not only do they know the intricacies of the lunar cycle, but they plant their herbs according to the lunar cycle. They harvest their herbs according to the lunar cycle. They do their healing rituals according to the lunar cycle. So the lunar cycle is deeply tied with healing. Those are the energies that come from the moon is healing. And even if you look in astrology and you look at the element of our personality that the moon, like, I guess, covers, it's our emotions. It's everything that is the core and the root of our healing. So when it comes to overall healing, the lunar cycle has a very significant role in our healing. And most people don't even think to look at it, like to really consider. Let's take the time, let's reflect along, let's see if these cycles are matched out. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to the women's cycle, we won't always match directly. Like some women, for example, bleed with the full moon. Some women will bleed with the moon. And I guess superstitiously, there's associations based on when you bleed, right? In terms of like inherent. So that may be moving into woo-hoo land, but these are beliefs. I mean, these are cultural beliefs that have, been held by cultures for a long time. But yes, women's healing, your menstrual cycle, the lunar cycle, it's all part of femininity. I mean, the lunar cycle is actually, I guess, deemed to be a feminine energy.
And it's interesting what you brought up, that when you were younger, it was something that we were made to be afraid of. And I find that it transmits over here in this culture where we as women are afraid of our femininity. We're afraid of that power. We're afraid of the moon. We're afraid of that aspect of ourselves where we deem it as something disgusting, something what we hide. And I think that has tremendous impact, as you said, on our ability to heal, because we're not able to heal if the source of our power is being relegated to a zone that we should either be afraid of or ashamed of, or think that it's just something that we need to try and get rid of, and bury it somewhere, So awesome. Now tell me a little bit more about what are the kinds of people that come to you, and what are the why do they come to you? What is it that is going on in their lives that says, I really need to go and see Tennille?
There's different things. I mean, to be very honest, most is coming from the parenting perspective, right? Because, oh my gosh, parents are overwhelmed in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I've got, I think one of my closest clients is actually a gentleman, is a single dad.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and he's primarily responsible for his children and wants to really like bond with them. So
Mm-hmm.
he's found the guidance to be quite helpful,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, especially since he got two girls and a boy,
Oh,
right?
oh,
And the girls are
handful.
entering their teenage years. So, there's that feel like, they becoming teenagers,
Yeah, yeah.
And in the parenting journey, there's so much about unpacking your own stuff.
Mm.
Or you can address what's going on with your children. So awareness is the very first pillar of my method in terms of conscious parenting method.
Yeah.
And again, that awareness comes down to not just being aware of, your feelings, your emotions, really all, challenging where they come from, but
Mm.
also being aware of your responses, because that's one thing that people overlook. The biological aspect of mental health is something that is very strongly overlooked.
Mm.
Like your body tells you when something is wrong.
Exactly.
And so many of us are so out of touch with our bodies. We're so used to masking issues with medication. Um, and all that does is not really allow our body to tell us what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
So awareness is the first part. So it's that biological awareness, that psychological awareness, and of yourself first,
Mm.
and then the children.
Mm.
Right. And with your children, a key part of awareness that parents overlook is expectation in terms of developmental stages.
Mm.
Right. We've got this very, I guess, bad habit of thinking that because a child reaches a certain age, they should be able to do this or should be able to do that, or,
Mm-hmm.
control their behavior.
Yeah.
Now, if we've never taught them, how would they
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And most of us don't know because we weren't taught. And that's part of the awareness too, is recognition. So a lot of my clients will be primarily parents,
Mm-hmm.
where I have the Lunar line journals, which you can use to basically reflect daily. And
Okay.
that's all part of bringing that awareness first.
Mm.
Bring yourself to awareness first, and then we can build upon your awareness thereafter. And it's awareness, like I said, of yourself, and then also of your kids. But you have to get to know you first.
Mm.
Whatever it is, you have to know you first.
So now, what is a common mistake that you find a lot of parents are making? And what would you say is the most important thing that we can do to promote the healing, not only for ourselves, but also for our children?
Um, the most common mistake is thinking that financial support is support.
Mm.
It's a necessary part of life, absolutely. We live in a world where you have to make the money.
Mhm.
But children need your time more than anything else. And that time doesn't have to be a lot of time. It really doesn't. They just need you to be there,
Mhm.
for present.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of parents get caught up in, oh, I don't have money to do this, or oh, I can buy my child that, or all this. And it's like, no, just sit with them, talk
There.
to them,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, like cuddle them, ask them how their day was, but not just like, how was your day? Like, oh, what did you like? Like,
Mhm.
what was something that made you smile today? What was something that made you sad today? Like, literally engage with them. When I say children open up and they love it, and then they start looking forward to being around you because they can't wait to tell you. And this is no matter the age, teenagers, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
teenagers,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
older, even the 20-year-olds. Yeah.
love it, and I think one thing that parents also have to understand is they have to forgive themselves for what they don't know.
Mm.
Because right now of course, there's a lot of like, especially with conscious parenting, it's become a thing people are beginning to understand. And when parents don't understand that they may not have learned the tools necessary, right? But that doesn't make them bad parents.
Exactly.
I believe every parent is doing the best they can with what they have. So if you are open to learning, you get to improve, right? And that's even myself. As I said, I've got two different age groups, right? I had a very traumatic childhood, so I knew going into parenting, I didn't want to do to my son the things that were done to me. But the thing that you don't know is that when you have trauma, it's not only like, for example, I used to get beat, right? And I think it's, common with certain age groups. It's not just the beating that causes the trauma. It's all these survival mechanisms that you develop as a result. And if you're unaware of that, then, and that was a situation with my son, while I never hit him, never had to, he was always able to talk to me openly about stuff. There were still places where I shut down because I didn't know how to deal with it, right? But because thankfully my son was, able to speak to me and tell me, and I was willing to reflect and consider, even if I don't agree with what he's saying, maybe there's something to it. And a lot of the time there was. And all that did was give me an opportunity to grow. So parents, number one, they really need to get rid of that idea that your children telling you how they feel is being rude or disrespectful. No, it's actually giving you an opportunity to grow. That's what it really is. Take them in. Take them in. You may learn something about yourself that you didn't know. And there is nobody in the world that's going to love you more than your children. And when they really love you, you know that it's coming from a place of love, right? They're not saying this because they want to piss you off. They're saying it because they love you. And so take it in.
Absolutely. I tell you, it's a treasure to me, all of my children. I tell everyone that the lessons that I've learned from my children far supersede any piece of paper that I have gotten from any university or whatever it is, They are the ones that God has sent to us to allow us to make that journey to grow closer to the the beauty and the divinity that we all have within ourselves. So, absolutely. Well, I thank you for being here with us. And you said that you're going to share with us a very special gift. And can you tell us a little bit more about that gift that we have in the show notes for everyone?
Oh, okay, yes. So that's the self-love journal I'm talking about. So these are updated every month, and you can go back every month and it will be free every month, aligned with the lunar cycle. So it's specifically related to the energies, because the moon goes through the whole zodiac, each cycle, and each zodiac sign has a specific energy. So the journal is a way for you to start kind of reflecting. So there's reflection prompts, there's affirmations, there's little intentional practices that you can do, all aligned with the energies of the moon for that day. So that'll, at least if you're interested in considering the lunar alignment aspect, this is kind of a start. And it's the goal is self-love. So all of these are kind of related to self-love. Again,
Wow.
self-awareness.
And you say it's a different one for every lunar cycle?
Every lunar cycle it's updated. Yeah. Every lunar cycle it's updated, because again, the energy shifts slightly every lunar cycle. So therefore the content shifts slightly every lunar cycle. I mean, there'll be, a little bit of repetition here and there, but for the most part, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
New affirmations, new intentional practices. I call them practices because initially they were rituals, and I'm like, that sounds too witchy. So intentional practices it is.
Oh, that is so beautiful. The gift that just keeps on giving, ladies. So please be sure to go into the show notes and download your free intentional journal, not only for this lunar cycle, but go back every lunar cycle and get the new updated version. Well, in any case, Tennille, thank you so very much for sharing this time with us. And I look forward to getting my journal so that I can continue my journey with you.
Yay.
Ladies, as always, go ahead. You were saying?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying thank you for having me.
Oh,
I guess I'm so sorry.
oh no, not at all. There is nothing to apologize for. So, as I was saying, ladies, as always, we wish you the best. And until next time, peace and blessings. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Mommy Heal Thyself. If you like what we're doing here, please share, subscribe, like us, and leave a comment. Your feedback is very much